The pounding in Alpha King Kale Ardent's skull felt like war drums beating inside bone. He woke with a groan, dragging a hand over his face as the golden light of dawn knifed through the tall windows of Stormholt's royal chamber. The scent of smoke, steel, and too much celebratory wine clung to the air, reminders of last night's victory feast. His council had sworn he needed it. His body now strongly disagreed. He pushed himself up on one elbow, blinking blearily at the carved stone ceiling. Then he froze. Someone was standing in the shadowed corner of his chamber. Every instinct honed on bloody battlefields snapped awake. Kale swung his legs over the bed, muscles tight, ready to fight. "Who's there?" His voice came out rough, the growl of an alpha who did not like surprises. The figure flinched, then stepped forward into a shaft of light. It was a woman. Not just any woman, an Omega. Her skin was a deep rose gold, traced with pale, luminous markings that flowed along her throat and wrists like starlight caught in flesh. Silvery hair fell in long waves over her shoulders, barely hiding the rough, torn dress that revealed more than it protected. Plain iron shackles circled her wrists, chains trailing to a ring in the floor beside his bed. The sight hit Kale harder than any battlefield wound. "Who put you here?" he demanded, voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. She kept her gaze down, as if eye contact itself had always been punished. "Lord Malrek, your majesty," she whispered. He said, "I am your reward." "My reward." The words tasted like ash. Stormholt had old customs, old cruelties the capital liked to pretend no longer existed. Taking living spoils from the conquered was one of them. Kale had already outlawed the practice in his armies. Apparently, his spy master thought himself above royal decrees. "What is your name?" he asked, softer now. The Omega hesitated, as if the answer might get her struck. "Elira," she said at last. "I was told I am yours now, Alpha King." "To command?" "To use." Something hot and ugly twisted in Kale's chest. "You are not a thing," he said. "And you are not my property." Her fingers twitched around the length of chain. Confusion flickered across her face, cutting through the practiced emptiness in her eyes. Omegas were meant to be cherished, protected, revered as rare mates in most packs. To see one like this, collared, chained, made his wolf snarl inside his ribs. "Listen," he said, taking a slow step closer, careful not to crowd her. "Whatever Malrek told you, I do not own you. Not now, not ever." Her gaze lifted for the first time, and the impact nearly stole his breath. Her eyes were a bright, molten amber, pupils edged with faint silver. Omega eyes, yes, but there was something else there too. Wariness. Intelligence. A spark that refused to die. "Then why am I chained to your bed, your majesty?" Elira asked quietly. The question landed like a blade. Kale exhaled, jaw tight. "Because some men in this kingdom still think power is proven by how many helpless people they can keep at their feet." His lip curled. "They forgot who their Alpha King is." He reached toward the shackles, then paused as she flinched. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, voice low. "I swear it on my crown, my wolf, and my blood." For a heartbeat, either of them moved. The chamber was so quiet he could hear the flutter of her pulse. "Also," he added, because somewhere far away he remembered he wasn't just a king in a private room, he was a voice in someone's headphones. "If you like stories where the Alpha King doesn't act like a monster, make sure you subscribe for more stories like this and comment where you're watching from. It helps more people find these tales." Then his hand closed around cold iron, and something in the room shifted. The moment his fingers brushed the shackle, a faint glow pulsed along the markings on Elira's skin. Her breath hitched. The hair on Kale's arms rose. "Bond," his wolf whispered, stunned. "Fated." Kale's heart slammed against his ribs. No. Fate wouldn't be this cruel, or this precise. He met Elira's wide, frightened eyes and realized one terrifying, impossible truth. The reward chained at his bed wasn't just some broken Omega. She was the one the old prophecy had warned him about, the Omega whose bond would either break his kingdom's chains or shatter him from the inside first. Cale's grip tightened around the shackle. The iron was ordinary, forged in his own smithies. But the moment his skin touched it, he heard the faintest answering hum beneath his palm, like something ancient waking up. Alira's markings glowed a little brighter, silver-white lines pulsing along her wrists and throat in time with her racing heartbeat. She looked as startled as he felt. "You felt that?" Cale said softly. "Yes," she whispered. I do not understand it." "Neither do I." The old seers of Stormholt had whispered of this for years, an Omega not of his lands bearing the star mark, whose bond with the Alpha King would tip the balance of power across every pack and vassal kingdom. The High Council had used it as a threat, a leash, telling Cale he must only ever take a queen they approved, never risk some wild, fate-sent Omega that could not be controlled. And here she was, chained, delivered by his own spymaster like contraband. Cale forced his shoulders to relax, unclenching his jaw before the anger could bleed into his voice. "First things first," he said. "We get you out of these." He found the key left carelessly on his bedside table, because of course Malrek would be that arrogant. One by one, the locks clicked open. The chains slid away, leaving pale, bruised bands circling Alira's wrists. She stared at her bare skin as if it were a dream. "You are freeing me?" Her voice shook on the last word. "I am unchaining you," Cale corrected. "Freedom will take a little more work. Malrek will not like this." A shadow crossed her expression. "If you send me back, he will have me killed." Cale's wolf snarled again. "No one is killing you," he said. "Not while I breathe." She studied him, searching for cracks in the promise. "Why?" she asked at last. "You owe me nothing, Alpha King. I am defective stock. That is what they call me. I do not obey. I do not break correctly." She lifted her chin with a hint of pride. "Men like Malrek do not like that." Cale almost smiled. There it was again, that flicker of fire. "Maybe I prefer things that don't break," he said. "And stop calling yourself merchandise. You are an Omega. You are a person. That is enough." Alira blinked, as if tasting the idea on her tongue. Outside the tall windows, the horns of Stormholt sounded, signaling the change of the watch. In a few minutes, servants would come with hot water and breakfast. It wouldn't take long for the news to spread. The Alpha King had been gifted an Omega. The court would whisper. The packs would speculate. The High Council would sharpen their knives. Cale straightened, decision settling in his bones like steel. "Alira," he said. "For now you stay here. As my guest, not my slave. No one touches you, no one gives you orders but me, and I will not give you any you don't agree to. Do you understand?" Her brows furrowed. "I will try. That's all I ask." He moved to the door, then stopped and looked back. She'd drawn her knees up to her chest on the edge of his bed, chains gone but posture still small, like a bird that had forgotten how to fly. The sight made something in him hurt. "I'll speak to Malrek," Cale said. "And the council. We'll find a way to keep you safe. I swear it." "Swear on what?" she asked softly. He met her gaze. "On my crown. On my pack. On the bond that just tried to wake itself when I touched your chains." Her lips parted. The markings along her throat glimmered like distant stars. "Rest," Cale said, forcing himself to turn away. "You're not in danger here. Not anymore." He knew it was half a lie even as he spoke it. Because if Malrek had risked bringing a prophecy-marked Omega into Stormholt, the game at court was already far more deadly than Cale had realized. And if the bond he'd felt was real, then fate had just thrown its own weight onto the board, whether the Alpha King wanted it or not. The great hall of Stormholt Keep still smelled of spilled ale and roasted boar. Cale strode between toppled benches and sleeping guards, each step sending a fresh throb of pain through his head. Sunlight lanced through the high windows, catching on banners that showed his crest, a silver wolf crowned in fire, hanging above a floor still sticky with last night's celebration. Lord Malrek was exactly where Cale expected him to be. Seated at the long council table, perfectly sober, sipping dark tea as if he hadn't been the one urging the king to drink just one more, Your Majesty. You must show the men you can keep up. The spymaster rose smoothly as Cale approached, bowing with court-perfect grace. My Alpha King, he purred. I trust your gift was to your satisfaction? Cale didn't bother with pleasantries. He slammed both palms onto the table, leaning in until they were eye to eye. Why is there an Omega chained to my bed? He asked, voice low and lethal. Malrek's thin mouth curved. His dark hair was tied back in a silk ribbon. His rings glittered in the light. Ah. Straight to business, then. I feared you might forget, given the amount you drank. Answer the question, Cale growled. Because you saved my life on the Ember Pass, Malrek replied smoothly. I was surrounded. You came. You bled. You killed the raiders who would have gutted me. By the old oaths of my house, I owed you a life debt. The Omega settles that debt. A rare creature, hard to acquire. You should be thanking me. I outlawed the trade of living spoils 3 years ago. You outlawed it in your armies. Malrek corrected. Stormholt's borders are porous. The world is wide, and not all lands share your soft sentiments, Your Majesty. I merely purchased what others had already broken. Cale's hands curled into fists on the table. She's a person. She is an Omega, Malrek said, as if that were the same thing. Do you know what men would pay for her in the southern markets? Especially one with unusual markings and stubborn spirit. When her previous master declared her defective, I happened to be nearby with a full purse. I thought of you. Of your lonely bed. Of your need for an heir. Cale's wolf lunged against its cage. You will not speak of my bed, he snarled. Not when you have chained prophecy itself to it. For the first time, something flickered behind Malrek's eyes. Surprise. Calculation. Fear. So you felt it, he murmured. The bond. Cale's blood ran cold. You knew. I suspected, Malrek said. The old texts speak of a foreign Omega bearing star marks whose bond with the Alpha King will remake the order of things. You have refused every match the Council paraded before you. The kingdom grows restless without an Omega Queen. I merely hastened fate's hand. Hastened? Cale repeated, disbelief sharpening every syllable. By having her collared and sold across half the world? Malrek's expression did not change. Fate is not kind, Your Majesty. It never has been. Perhaps a little cruelty is the only language it respects. Cale straightened slowly. Listen to me very carefully, Malrek. You will never again buy or sell a living soul in my name. You will not speak of Illyria to anyone outside this hall. You will forget the prophecy, or I will personally tear your trade empire apart stone by stone and salt what's left. You forget yourself, Malrek said, heat finally creeping into his voice. You may be Alpha King, but my web of favors and debts holds this kingdom together. If you cross me over one slave, say that word again, Cale said softly, and I will see how well you do without your tongue. Silence snapped tight between them. Then Malrek smiled, slow and poisonous. Very well, he said. Keep your guest. But know this, a prophecy is a blade with 2 edges. That Omega's bond may yet bring your downfall, Cale Ardent. And when it does, do not say I did not warn you. Cale turned away before he said or did something he couldn't take back. As he left the hall, every hair on his arm stood on end. He could feel the spymaster's gaze between his shoulder blades like a dagger already thrown. Back in his chamber, an Omega with star-marked skin waited, freshly unchained, eyes still too used to the floor. Between them, an unseen bond had already begun to stir. And somewhere in the tangle of fate and prophecy, Cale could sense the shape of a looming power shift, one that would either free every Omega in the kingdom, or cost him his crown. Kale paused outside his own chamber door, hand on the iron latch. It was strange, he thought, to feel nervous about stepping into a room he owned. He had faced armies, rogue alphas, even a half-mad dragon once, and yet something about the quiet on the other side of this door made his heartbeat pick up, sharp and uneven. It wasn't fear. It was awareness of her. He pushed the door open. Alira was standing near the window, unchained, bare feet on the stone, sunlight washing over her rose-gold skin. Someone, likely a terrified servant, had left a folded bundle of clean linen on a chair. She'd found a simple white shift in the pile and changed. It fell to her knees, modest but ill-fitting, cinched at the waist with a strip of cloth she'd knotted herself. She looked up as he entered, instinctively straightening, hands folding together as if awaiting orders. "You don't have to do that," Kale said. "Stand like you're waiting to be struck." Her fingers tightened anyway. "Old habits are heavy, Your Majesty." "Kale," he corrected. "In this room, when we're alone, you call me Kale." Her brows knit. "That is improper." He snorted. "So is chaining an Omega to a king's bed. The court can recover from a little impropriety." She almost smiled, a brief, startled flicker that made his wolf lean forward, fascinated. The markings along her throat brightened with the movement, as if reacting to emotion. "Did he agree to free me?" she asked, hope and dread tangled together. Kale's answer was immediate. "No. Malrek never does anything that doesn't serve Malrek. He said returning you would dishonor his house and insult me. He also threatened, indirectly, to break this kingdom over one slave." His lip curled around the word. "So we're not returning you. We're rewriting the rules. The rules do not favor Omegas," Alira said softly. "Then we change the rules," Kale replied. "Or break them until they remember who they serve." She looked at him for a long moment. "You speak as if such things are easy." "They're not," he admitted. "But I'm the Alpha King. If I can't shift the weight of old laws, then the title means nothing." Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken things. Kale moved to the small table by the hearth where breakfast had been laid out: bread, cheese, smoked meat, and a pot of strong tea. He poured 2 cups. "Come eat," he said. Her body twitched as if she wanted to move but was waiting for permission. "Old training, deep as bone." "Alira," he repeated quietly. "Guest. Not servant." She took a tentative step, then another, as if crossing the room were a trial in itself. When she sat, she did so on the edge of the chair, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. He slid a plate toward her. "You don't need my leave to drink or eat. If you're hungry, take what you need." Her gaze dropped to the food, then flicked up again, searching his face for some cruel joke. Finding none, she picked up a piece of bread. The first bite was small, testing. The second was not. Hunger surged past her careful control. "When did you last eat?" Kale asked quietly. "Yesterday," she said between cautious mouthfuls. "Morning. Before they loaded us onto the caravan. There was talk that I would be culled rather than sold again. Defective stock is bad business, they said." Her fingers trembled around the bread. Then Malrek arrived. He forced his hands to relax around his cup. His wolf wanted to rip through stone and hunt every slaver who had ever called her defective. "You are not defective," he said. "They are. Anyone who looks at an Omega and sees profit instead of person is already broken." She swallowed, eyes glistening. "Among my people," she murmured, "Omegas were hidden, guarded. We were considered sacred. Until the wars. Until the packs turned on each other and discovered how valuable our bonds could be as weapons." Her mouth twisted. "Fate has a bitter sense of humor. Fate threw you into my room," Kale said. "If it wanted a weapon, it chose poorly. I don't want to wield you. I want to keep you alive." The words came out before he could soften them. Her eyes widened. And if this bond between us is real, he added more carefully, we decide what it means. Not Malrek. Not the council. Not prophecy. The air seemed to thicken. She drew a slow breath, amber gaze locked to his. You felt it too, she said. Not a question. I did. Her fingers brushed the faint bruise on her wrist where the shackle had rested. The silver lines there flared softly, responding to the memory of his touch. Where I come from, she said, a bond like that is fate itself. You cannot turn from it without breaking something inside you. I've been breaking myself to keep this kingdom standing for years, Kale said. If fate thinks it can bully me, it's about to be disappointed. But even as he said it, he couldn't ignore the subtle tug in his chest that pulled toward her, the constant, low thrum of awareness that hadn't left since he'd first touched those chains. Fate wasn't just knocking. It had already stepped inside. By midday, Stormholt Keep was awake and humming with rumor. Kale could feel it in the way servants' eyes flicked toward his door and away again, in the sudden silence that followed him down corridors, in the tight expressions on his counselors' faces when he summoned them to the war room. They gathered around the carved stone table. Lord Malrek, of course, draped in smug composure, Lady Thera, his battle general, High Priest Jorin, whose job it was to care more about omens than spilled blood, and 3 lesser lords whose lands bordered his own. Thera spoke first. She always did. There is talk you accepted a chained Omega as a gift, she said bluntly. From your spymaster. Please tell me the talk is wrong. Kale folded his arms, letting his gaze sweep the table. The talk is half wrong, he said. An Omega was brought to my chamber in chains. That part is true. I did not accept her as property. That part is a lie I expect every person in this room to help me correct. One of the border lords, a thick-set man named Orvin, frowned. With respect, your majesty, an Omega of unknown blood appears in your bed and you, what? Invite her to tea? If I must choose between sharing tea with an Omega and sharing a table with men who think slavery is acceptable, Kale said flatly, I know where my loyalty lies. Malrek's smile did not waver, but his eyes sharpened. You speak so strongly against the practice the rest of the realm tolerates, he said. Yet you would risk stability over one girl? She's not just one girl. Thera cut in, gray eyes narrowing. If the whispers I've heard are true, she bears the star marks. The prophecy speaks of such an Omega. We should be very careful how we treat her. Jorin, the high priest, folded his thin hands. The old texts say, when the star-marked Omega crosses the king's threshold, the wolf crown will either shatter or shine brighter than ever before. I have prayed for guidance since dawn. The omens are unclear. Kale's jaw clenched. Then perhaps instead of waiting for the skies to send us a neat answer, we could use our wits. To do what? Orvin demanded. Keep a foreign Omega in our most fortified keep? If her bond with you corrupts the Alpha line. Or strengthens it, Thera countered. Or sparks a war, Malrek murmured, sounding almost pleased by the idea. Kale slammed his palm down on the stone. Enough. Silence dropped like a stone. She will remain here under my protection, he said. As my guest. Not as a slave, not as a broodmare to be paraded, not as a weapon. Anyone who acts otherwise defies my command as Alpha King. And if word reaches the southern packs? Malrek pressed. Do you think they will leave such a resource in your hands out of respect for your ethics? Kale met his gaze, letting the full weight of his power rise behind his words. If they come as slavers, he said, voice low, they will leave as ash. For a heartbeat, Malrek's composure slipped. The lesser lords flinched. Thera's mouth curved in the faintest approving smile. Very well, Malrek said smoothly, recovering. We will play it your way. For now. The meeting moved on, to border patrols, rumors of rogue alphas in the east, grain shortages in the lower valleys, but Kale heard little of it. His thoughts kept circling back to the woman in his chamber, to the way her markings had glowed at his touch, to the quiet disbelief in her voice when she'd asked if he was truly freeing her. He dismissed the council earlier than usual. On his way back to his rooms, he passed a narrow balcony that overlooked the training yards. Below, warriors sparred with wooden swords, their shouts rising like birds. Standing at the railing, alone and barefoot on the stone, was Elira. A servant stood a few paces behind her, hovering as if afraid to leave and more afraid to stay. Cale stepped onto the balcony. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. She didn't startle. Somehow, she'd sensed him before he spoke. "The room felt too small," she said, eyes fixed on the training ground. "I spent months in a wagon cage. Walls and bars. I needed sky." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the salt snow scent of the high passes. "Does it bother you?" he asked quietly. "Watching them train?" "No." Her gaze tracked the warrior's movements with unsettling focus. "They are undisciplined, though. Too much brute force, not enough precision." He arched a brow. "You speak like a captain." She hesitated, then glanced up. "Among my people," she said slowly, "Omegas of my bloodline were trained to defend our alphas, to stand beside them in battle if ever the need came. It made us valuable. Too valuable. When the wars turned, we became prizes." He studied her hands resting on the railing, small, scarred, surprisingly steady. "You can fight," he said. "Yes." "Then perhaps the walls of Stormholt will feel less like a cage," Cale said. "If you remember you are not helpless inside them." She looked back at the training yard. One of the warriors stumbled, overextended, and his opponent tapped him on the ribs with a blunt blade. Elira's mouth twisted. "You want to correct them," Cale guessed. "I could show them some things," she admitted, then shook her head quickly. "Forgive me. It is not my place." "It is if I say it is," Cale replied. "And I think my men could use a lesson from someone who knows what it means to fight without believing she'll be caught if she falls." Her eyes widened. "You would have an Omega instruct your warriors?" "I would have you do it," he said. "Not because you are an Omega, but because you are skilled. The bond between us already shifts the balance of power in this keep, Elira. We might as well use that shift to build something better." The wind caught, lifting a strand of her hair. For a moment, he felt the faint brush of her emotions against his own, surprise, uncertainty, a fragile thread of hope, and knew the bond was already deepening, whether either of them wanted it to or not. Fate had thrown them together. What they built from here would be their choice. The first time Elira stepped into the training yard, every head turned. Warriors froze mid-swing, wooden swords dropping an inch as they stared. Omegas in Stormholt were rare enough. A foreign Omega, unchained, walking at the Alpha King's side? That was unheard of. Cale felt their eyes on him as strongly as hers. He kept his chin high, shoulders easy, pacing the length of the yard as if this were the most natural scene in the world. "Continue," he called. "Anyone who stops moving owes Thera an extra round of drills." That got them going again. Cale caught his general's eye where she leaned against a post, arms folded. Thera gave the slightest nod and a ghost smile that said, "You enjoy starting fires, don't you?" Maybe he did. He guided Elira toward a clear space near the center. "This is where we run formation drills," he said aloud for the benefit of the men, as if giving her a simple tour. "But today we'll do something different." He turned to face her. "Show me," he said. "The way you were trained." The yard quieted again, curiosity winning over discipline. Elira glanced around at the watching faces, then at him. "I need a partner," she said softly. "One who will try to strike me. That is how I was taught." Cale gestured to the nearest warrior. "Aaron," he called. "Step up." The young man jogged over, breath misting in the cold air. He was one of the better fighters in the yard, quick, strong, eager. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing. "My lady." His gaze flicked Elira with a mix of respect and confusion. Elira is going to demonstrate a different style of combat, Kale said. You will attempt to land a blow. Do not hold back because she is smaller or because she is an Omega. If she breaks your nose, you have my permission to complain to the healers later. A ripple of laughter broke some of the tension. Elira took her place opposite Aaron, barefoot on the packed dirt. She rolled her shoulders once, and Kale felt the subtle shift in the bond. The way her focus sharpened, the way her fear receded under practiced calm. Ready? She asked. Aaron nodded, bringing his practice blade up. He lunged. She wasn't there. In the space of a breath, Elira slipped past his guard, turning his momentum with the lightest touch of her palm. She pivoted, swept his leg, and had him on his back with her bare foot pressing lightly to his throat before most of the men had fully processed the movement. The yard went very, very still. Kale's wolf let out a pleased huff inside his chest. Again, Elira said, stepping back. They repeated the sequence with variations. Each time, she flowed around Aaron's attacks like water around stone, using balance and leverage rather than brute strength. She demonstrated disarms, joint locks, and evasions that left the warrior panting and grinning despite his bruises. When she finally stepped away, the men were staring at her with open respect. That, Thera said, pushing off the post and striding over, was the most interesting thing I've seen in this yard all year. Where did you learn it? Elira hesitated. From my pack, she said quietly. Before it fell. Thera nodded once, as if that were all the answer she needed. Can you teach my captains? She asked. And through them, the rest. Elira's eyes widened. Aye, if the Alpha King allows it. He does, Kale said. On one condition. She looked at him, wary. Condition? You do not teach because I command it, he said. You teach because you choose to. If at any point you wish to stop, you stop. No questions. No punishment. The wind tugged at her hair again. For a heartbeat, he felt something bright surge along the bond, pride, fierce and new. Then I choose to teach, she said. The declaration rang louder in his chest than in the yard. Men drifted back to their drills. Thera began barking orders, organizing captains to observe. Elira fell into quiet conversation with Aaron, correcting his stance, placing his hands with sure, gentle touches. Kale watched for a moment longer, then turned away, the weight of what he just set in motion settling over him. In one morning, he had turned a foreign Omega from reward into instructor, from chained ornament into someone his warriors would trust with their lives. It was a small shift in the eyes of the realm, perhaps. But in the language of fate and power, it was enormous. And he could already feel the kingdom beginning to tilt. Of course, Malrek noticed. He always did. By evening, Kale found a sealed message on his desk, its wax stamped with the spy master's sigil, a spider crowned in thorns. He broke it open more out of obligation than desire. Inside, the words were neat, precise, and venomous. Your Majesty. It has come to my attention that the foreign Omega has been permitted to instruct your warriors in the art. While I am thrilled that you have found such creative uses for my gift, I must caution you. Already, certain lords whisper that your bond with this outsider has clouded your judgment. They ask, if an Omega can stand beside the Alpha in war, what need has the kingdom of a queen? Power does not like to be shared, Your Majesty. I suggest, for the stability of your rule, that you confine the girl to the more traditional roles expected of her kind. Before others decide to confine her, and you, for you. With all due loyalty. Malrek of the Thorns. Kale read it twice, jaw ticking. Power does not like to be shared. He could practically hear Malrek's voice in those lines, smooth and sly. The threat beneath the courtesy was clear: keep the Omega in a cage, or those who like cages might decide to rebuild one around your throne. He was still staring at the letter when a soft knock sounded at the door. Enter, he called. Elira slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She looked different than she had that morning, lighter somehow. The exhaustion in her shoulders was still there, but it was threaded now with something else, the afterglow of having been useful by choice rather than by command. "I hope I am not intruding," she said. "Thera suggested I speak to you about the training schedule." "Come in," Cale said, pushing the letter aside. "You're not intruding." She moved toward the hearth, letting its warmth chase the chill from her skin. "Your warriors learn quickly," she said. "They are used to strength, not subtlety, but they listen. It is strange to be asked to show, to explain, instead of to kneel." "How does it feel?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "Like the difference between being carried in a cage," she said slowly, "and walking on my own tired feet." His chest tightened. "I had a message from Malrak," he said. "He is not pleased that you're in the yard. He says lords are already whispering that I'm letting an Omega stand where only an Alpha should." She met his gaze steadily. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Letting me stand there?" "No," Cale answered without hesitation. "What I regret is ever allowing men like Malrak to believe they could speak for this kingdom's soul." A faint, startled smile curved her lips. "You speak as if Stormholt itself is alive." "It is," he said. "It's in the way the wind howls through the passes, the way the people stand when their Alpha walks by, not from fear, but because they choose to. I have bled to keep it that way." He hesitated, then crossed the room to stand before her. The bond hummed softly, awareness brushing awareness. He could feel the echo of her day, flashes of dirt under her feet, the solid weight of wooden practice swords, the touch of hands that did not mean harm when they gripped her arm to correct a stance. "You should know something," he said quietly. "Malrak will not stop pushing. The more you step into your own power, the more he will try to shove you back into shadows." "That is not new," Alira said dryly. "Men like him have always existed." "Yes, but now he's doing it in my keep," Cale replied. "That makes it my problem. And yours." He took a careful breath. "If you stay here, if you stay with me, this bond between us will change things. Not just for us, but for everyone who looks to this crown. You will be praised. You will be blamed. Some will call you a miracle. Others will call you a curse. I cannot promise safety. Only that I will stand between you and every blade I can." Silence stretched. Then Alira stepped closer, so close he could see the tiny constellations of light scattered along her markings, like stars hidden in skin. The bond pulsed, warm and steady. "When they chained me," she said, voice low, "I had no choices. Not about where I slept, what I wore, who touched me, whether I lived or died. I prayed to every spirit I knew for one thing only, a choice. Any choice. Even a small one." She reached up, fingers hovering just shy of his chest, above his heart. "Now fate offers me a bond with an Alpha King who frees me instead of claiming me," she whispered. "An Omega in chains would be grateful for any kindness. But I am not in chains anymore. So I will not answer you as a grateful captive. I will answer you as myself." Her eyes met his, bright and unflinching. "I stay," she said. "I stand beside you. Not because prophecy says so. Not because Malrak fears it. Because I choose it. Whatever storms it brings." The words rolled through the bond like thunder, rippling outward. Somewhere deep in the keep, a bell tolled the hour. Cale let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Then we face them together," he said. "You and I, Alpha and Omega. King and whatever title you decide to carve for yourself." Her mouth trembled into a small, fierce smile. "I have never had a title that was mine," she said. "Perhaps we start with Alira. And see what grows from there." Fate, he thought, might indeed be cruel. But in this moment, with the bond singing softly between them and her choice anchoring his own, it felt like fate had finally done one thing right. The whispers started before the sun fully set. Cale heard them in the hallways first, soft voices that fell silent when he passed. He saw them in the way lesser lords avoided his gaze, in the tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. By the time night draped Stormholt in shadow, 3 official requests for private audience had arrived at his door. He accepted all 3. They came one at a time. Each wore the same expression, concern dressed up as loyalty. "The people are uneasy," said Lord Hask. "The Pacts are confused," said Lord Orvin. "The Council fears instability," said Lady Meredith. And beneath all of it, the same question echoed unspoken. "Why does the Alpha King stand beside an Omega?" Kale answered none of their accusations directly. He simply watched them, listened, weighed the fear behind their words. They spoke of tradition, of order, of what had always been. None spoke of justice. After the last lord departed, Kale remained alone at the war table long after the torches burned low. The map of his kingdom lay before him, borders marked in iron ink, alliances in thread, faults and cracks that only a ruler learned to see. Then it happened. A sudden tightness seized his chest. Not pain. Fear. Not his own. "Elira," he whispered. He was already running when the wave of emotion hit him. Sharp, breathless panic slicing through the bond like a knife through silk. The connection pulled him through the keep, down 2 corridors, past startled guards, and into her chamber. She was awake. Sitting upright in bed. Breathing hard. When their eyes met, the fear vanished instantly. "You felt it too," she said. "Yes." The bond had awakened beyond sensation now. It was communication. Shared alarm. "Something is moving against us," she whispered. Kale knelt beside her bed. "Then we meet it together." Stormholt slept. But fate did not. Malrek moved in silence. By the time Kale realized the depth of the spymaster's betrayal, the messages had already crossed half the realm. Forged decrees bearing the Alpha King's seal were delivered to the eastern and southern pacts. Documents declaring Elira a dangerous aberration, proclaiming Kale compromised by a corrupted Omega bond. The lies spread faster than truth ever could. Within days, scouts returned bleeding and terrified. "Rogue Alphas are gathering," one gasped. "Not under one banner, but many. Hired teeth. Paid in gold and permission to raid." Stormholt's war horns sounded before dawn. The keep erupted into motion. Armor rang. Banners rose. Torches flared in endless lines across battlements. Kale stood on the eastern wall as snow began to fall in heavy, silent flakes. "They'll test us first," Thera said beside him. "Small force. Probe the defenses." Elira stood on his other side. Not behind him. Beside him. "They're not coming just to test," she said quietly. "They're coming to take." Kale glanced at her. "You're certain?" She nodded. "This fear, it's not scattered. It's being directed." The bond trembled. Below the walls, shapes moved in the pre-dawn fog. Horns blared. The first assault had begun. The first wave struck the eastern gate like a battering ram made of flesh. Alphas rushed the walls howling, shields raised, ladders slamming into stone. Arrows rained down in answer. Steel rang on iron. The world dissolved into motion, heat, and impact. Kale fought at the gate itself. He moved like the storm his banners bore, hammering enemies back, throwing them from ladders, breaking formations with raw force and perfect control. His wolf surged beneath his skin, burning, relentless. Behind him, the Omega-born fighters waited. They were not armored like warriors. They wore no crests. But they did not tremble. Elira stood at their front. "No," she said. They moved. Not in a roar, but in silence. They slipped behind the enemy lines through side passages only servants once used. They disarmed. Crippled. Redirected. An enemy Alpha broke through the gate in a surge of brute force and charged for Kale's back. Kale never saw him. Elira did. She crossed the distance in a blur. One strike. Perfectly placed. The enemy Alpha crumpled at Kale's feet. The entire battlefield froze. An Omega had just felled an Alpha. And she had done it without hatred. Without hesitation. Without fear. The old world cracked in that moment. And no one who witnessed it would ever unsee it. The dead from the first assault were carried into the inner yard by torchlight. Snow clung to armor and lashes. The air smelled of iron and smoke and the harsh mint of the healer's salves. Cale walked among his wounded warriors, clasping forearms, meeting eyes, promising that their blood had not been spilled in vain. Everywhere he went, they spoke of the same thing. Not the ladders. Not the enemy. Her. The Omega. One captain said weakly, fingers pressed to the bandage at his side. She moved like a ghost, Your Majesty. I'd be dead without her. Another, younger, cheeks streaked with dirt. She broke that Alpha in one strike. I didn't know Omegas could. I didn't know they were allowed. Cale just squeezed his shoulder. They've always been able, he said quietly. They were never allowed. Later, in the Great Hall, the surviving officers gathered. Thera stood at the front, arms folded, eyes sharp. Alira stood near the side wall, not on the dais, not among the common ranks, somewhere in between, where there was no place yet marked for her. The murmurs were louder here. Less respectful. Less afraid of being heard. She shouldn't be in the yard. She's a risk. She's a symbol we did not choose. Thera slammed her fist into a table. Silence. The hall obeyed. We held the gate because every soul here fought, she said. Including the Omega you're so busy gossiping about. If you're so offended that a woman saved your lives, perhaps next time we should let the enemy thin the ranks of cowards first. A few men had the decency to flush. Thera turned to Alira. You wished to say something? She asked. It was not entirely a question. Alira stiffened, then stepped forward. The hall parted for her uneasily, like a herd uncertain whether what approached was predator or shepherd. Her bare feet made no sound on the stone. I was trained from childhood to obey, she said, voice low but carrying. To be quiet. To be pleasing. To be whatever my owner wished. When I was sold the first time, they told me my thoughts did not matter. When I was sold the second, they told me my name did not matter. Her gaze swept the hall, steady, unflinching. Today, she continued, I did what I was bred never to do. I acted for myself. I fought for you because I chose to. Not because I was commanded. Some of you are offended that an Omega stood between death and your backs. If that shames you. She lifted her chin just slightly. Then perhaps it is a shame you needed. A ripple went through the room. Shock. Anger. A few flickers of rough, grudging admiration. Alira stepped back, but not as far as before. The space she stood in felt, claimed. Not given. Cale felt the bound pulse in his chest, proud and aching all at once. When the hall finally emptied, he approached her by the cold hearth. You realize you just scolded half my command, he said. Her lips tilted. Will you punish me for it? Only, he said, by asking you to keep doing it. Her laugh was soft, disbelieving. You are a strange king, Cale Ardent. Good, he replied. The old kind nearly broke this realm. Outside, the war drums were already starting again. Inside, the first cracks in centuries of obedience had begun to spread. They chained Malrek in a tower cell that had once held foreign princes and rogue alphas. It still smelled faintly of both. Cale dismissed the guards, stepping inside alone. The spymaster sat on the narrow bench, shackles on his wrists and ankles, posture somehow still elegant. He glanced up as the door shut. Your Majesty, he said lightly. To what do I owe this intimate visit? Cale took no seat. You turned mercenary packs on my borders. You forged decrees in my name. You painted Alira as a cursed weapon and me as a broken king. Start talking. Malrek studied him, dark eyes shrewd even in the low light. Your scouts gave you the broad strokes, I see. The truth, Cale snapped. The truth, Malrek echoed, tasting the word as if unsure he liked it. Very well. You know the prophecy, of course. Star-marked Omega. King's bond. Crown shattered or remade. You've heard priests speak of it like a story to frighten children into behaving. Kale said nothing. Malrek went on. What you do not know is that Alira's bloodline is older than your throne. Her foremothers were not just bonded to kings. They made them. No alpha bound to them remained merely a man with a crown. They became something more. Or they burned out trying. The last king who bonded one of her line burned his realm to the bedrock. The pack swore never again to let such blood and such a crown touch. Yet you bought her. Kale said. I bought insurance. Malrek corrected. So long as she was collared, her bond dormant, I could choose when and how to hand that sword to you. Or to your enemies. You expected me to treat her like property. Kale said, understanding landing with a sick thud. Chain her. Use her. Malrek shrugged as much as the shackles allowed. It was the only way to keep the balance. A controlled bond. A contained threat. Instead you freed her, put a training staff in her hand, stood beside her on the walls where every soldier could see the way she looks at you. His lip curled. You may think yourself noble, Kale. What you are is dangerous. So your answer was war, Kale said. To send teeth at my gates. My answer, Malrek said softly, was to give the realm what it already wanted, a monster to fear. Better they aim their terror at you and your Omega here at Stormholt than go hunting for such blood in every village. You think they would not? Once they know what she is? Kale stepped closer, hands braced on his thighs to keep from reaching for the man's throat. You do not get to call this kindness, he growled. No, Malrek agreed. I call it necessity. I have always been the man who does the things you are too good to stomach. Someone had to decide whether the realm survived a star-marked Omega bonded to its king. I chose to bet against you. He met Kale's eyes, and for the first time there was something almost like regret there. You are proving me wrong, he said. And I do not like it. Kale exhaled slowly. Do you know what the worst part is? He asked. I suspect you will tell me. You're right, Kale said quietly. About one thing. If they learn what Alira is, if they understand it even half as well as you do, there will be more than packs at my gates. Then hide her, Malrek said. Collar her. Sell her. Kill her. Or let them come and watch the realm tear itself apart over who gets to own a miracle. There are no clean options here, Your Majesty. There never were. Kale straightened. You've seen only two paths all your life, he said. Control or chaos. Maybe it never occurred to you there could be a third. And what is that? Malrek asked, almost amused. Kale turned toward the door. Choice, he said. True choice. Hers. Mine. Even yours. He knocked for the guard. Enjoy your tower, Malrek, he added over his shoulder. You won't be leaving until this is over. And if Stormholt still stands when it is, we will decide what punishment fits a man who sold people like coin and called it strategy. If, Malrek echoed, as the door opened. I'd start planning for when it doesn't if I were you. Kale left him to his shadows and his certainty. The bond tugged at his chest as he climbed back toward the light. Alira was awake somewhere above, feeling this too. And beyond the walls, an entire realm was shifting its weight, getting ready to push. The night before the full southern host arrived, Stormholt felt unnaturally still. The courtyards were empty, save for the guards on watch. The training yard lay quiet, its packed earth scarred from drills and blood. Banners hung limp, waiting for wind. Kale found Alira on the outer wall, alone, cloak wrapped tight against the cold. Snow had dusted her hair, catching in the silver strands like frost on spun metal. The bond between them hummed low and constant, no longer a distant thread, but a presence always at the edge of thought. You should be sleeping, he said softly. So should you, she replied without turning. He stepped up beside her, following her gaze. Torches burned along the lower slopes where their scouts had sighted the vanguard earlier. Farther out, scattered campfires marked the enemy's staging ground like a second sky fallen to earth. "How many?" she asked. "Too many," Cale said honestly. "Enough to break these walls if we fight them with old tactics." Her hands tightened on the stone. Through the bond, he felt the sharp spike of fear, and beneath it, something darker. "Malrek told you what my blood is," she said. Not a question. "He told me what others did with it," Cale answered. "Same thing," she said bitterly. "In my homeland, kings drank our blood to see enemy plans before they were made. Generals bound us and marched into impossible battles, knowing we would tear ourselves apart to keep them alive. We were the last shield and the first sacrifice. You are not in your homeland," Cale said. "Am I not?" she whispered. "The words are different, but the shape feels the same. A realm at war. A king at the center. An Omega who could tip the scales." Her shoulders shook once, then went still. "I do not want to become a weapon again, Cale. Not even for you." The bond twisted, tight with her dread. He turned, cupping her elbow, forcing her gently to face him. The wind bit at his cheeks. Her eyes were brighter than the torches. "Listen to me," he said. "If tomorrow comes and you do nothing but stay behind these walls, you will still be more than enough. You are not my sword. You are not a tool for this crown to wield. You are Alira. If the only choice you make is to survive, it will be worth more than every prophecy written by men who never bled for their own visions." Her throat worked. "But if I could save them," she whispered. "Save you? And I did nothing." "Then that is the burden we carry together," he said, fingers tightening. "That's what choice costs. It's heavier than orders. I won't lie to you about that. But I would rather die as your equal than live as the king of a woman I turned into a weapon." Silence fell between them, full of snow and breath and the distant clatter of armor. At last, she leaned her forehead lightly against his chest. The bond flared, warm, aching, stunningly gentle. "I don't know how to be anything but what they made me," she murmured. "Then we learn," he said, resting his chin atop her hair. "Together. Tomorrow if you fight because you choose to. If you stay behind the lines, it is because you chose that. If the bond does something neither of us planned." He swallowed. "We face that choice when it comes. Not before." Her hands fisted in his cloak, pulling him closer. Through the bond, he felt her steady herself on the shape of him, the feel of his heartbeat, the quiet, stubborn refusal to back down that had defined him long before she arrived. "Sleep with me?" she asked suddenly, then flushed. "I mean here. In the keep. Not, I don't care about the bed or the last time was." He huffed a soft, startled laugh. "Alira. Tomorrow could be the end," she said quickly. "I would like to fall asleep knowing you're not alone in whatever dreams find you." He pulled back just enough to see her face. "I was going to suggest the same thing," he admitted. They left the wall together. In his chambers, they didn't reach for each other with the hungry edge of that first night. They simply lay side by side, hands tangled, letting the bond settle around them like another blanket. He drifted towards sleep to the rhythm of her breathing. She followed the steady drum of his heart into her dreams. Outside, the enemy fires burned brighter. Inside, for a few hours, fate waited. And for once, it let them rest. The southern host struck at first light. Stormholt's horns roared, deep and thunderous, shaking frost from stone and fear from bone. The sky burned scarlet as the enemy surged from the treeline in endless dark waves. Alphas armored in iron, mercenaries bought with Malrek's gold, banners stitched with stolen crests. Cale took the front. Steel met steel. The world collapsed into sound and force and motion. He carved through the first ranks like fire through dry grass, his wolf unleashed at last. Every strike landed with brutal clarity. Every breath tore cold into his lungs. Above the eastern breach, Alira stood frozen. Not with fear. With the fight inside her. The bond screamed. Kale felt it, sharp, unbearable. Her terror for him, the way each blow he took echoed in her chest as if it were her own body breaking. It grew too loud. Too much. Then it happened. An enemy alpha burst through Kale's guard and drove a spear straight into his side. The impact dropped him to one knee. The battlefield stilled for one terrible heartbeat. "Elira!" Thera shouted. Elira screamed. The sound tore the sky open. Every star mark on her body ignited in blinding silver light. The bond completed in that instant, not gently, not quietly, but like a storm snapping into existence between two halves of a single soul. The ground split. A shockwave blasted from her body, throwing warriors and mercenaries alike from their feet. Elira moved without thinking, without fear, without restraint. She crossed the battlefield in a blur of light and will. Her hand struck the spear. It shattered. She reached Kale and dropped beside him, hands glowing as they pressed against his wound. The light poured into him through the bond, flooding his veins, knitting torn flesh, dragging him back from the abyss. Kale gasped. Power slammed into his body like living fire. He rose transformed. Alpha and Omega, fully bound. Not master and servant. Not king and weapon. But two halves of one force. And the battlefield felt it. The enemy line collapsed within the hour. What remained was panic. What followed was reckoning. Malrek tried to flee at dusk. He made it as far as the outer gate before Elira stopped him. No guards. No chains. Just her. "You used me as currency," she said softly. Malrek sneered. "You were always currency." She tilted her head. "Not anymore." Kale arrived moments later. The spymaster fell to his knees before he could be struck. "The prophecy fulfilled itself through you," Malrek hissed. "Not through me. You broke the balance. When the realm burns, remember that." Kale looked down at him. "The realm didn't burn," he said quietly. "It woke up." Malrek was stripped of title, gold, alliances, everything but his life. "Exile," Kale declared. "Alone. With no house to shelter you and no name to protect you." Guards dragged the screaming spymaster away. Silence followed. And then, the warriors knelt. First one. Then another. Then hundreds. Not to the crown alone, but to the bond beside it. Spring came early to Stormholt. The snow melted not into blood this time, but into green. The lords returned one by one, swearing new oaths not built on ownership, not on forced hierarchy, but on choice. The old Omega laws were burned publicly in the great square. The cheers echoed for miles. The council offered Elira the crown. She refused it. "I was owned once," she said. "I will never belong to a throne." So Kale gave her something no Omega had ever been offered before. A seat beside it. She became not queen, but bonded sovereign of Stormholt, the first of her kind. Years passed. Children grew up knowing Omegas as warriors, healers, leaders, scholars. Not property. Never again property. And on a quiet night, standing on the same wall where fate first tightened around them, Elira leaned into Kale's side and whispered, "They tried to give me to you as a reward." He kissed her hair. "And fate gave me a kingdom instead." The world did not change overnight. But it never went back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more, like the video, and comment your favorite part. This helps me out so much.